All right, let's just get right into it. Have you ever, just stared at a textbook and felt this wave of exhaustion just wash over you? That feeling of dread, that magnetic pull to do literally anything else? We're going to get to the bottom of why that happens, and I promise you, the answer is probably not what you think.
So if you've ever sat there scrolling through your phone instead of opening that book, and the thought that pops into your head is, ugh, I'm just so lazy, or I just don't have enough discipline, I really want you to just hit pause on that thought for a second. Because the story you're telling yourself, it's probably not the true one.
I mean, this is the go-to explanation, isn't it? It feels simple. If I just had more willpower, I could just power through it. But think about it. If it were really that easy, you would have done it by now. This story is super common, but honestly, it misses the entire point. The real story, though, is so much more interesting. And frankly, a lot more helpful. This isn't about some kind of character flaw. It's about your brain's wiring. It's a series of learned responses that have been quietly built up over the years. It's psychology, not a personal failure.
So let's officially just reframe this whole conversation. For this first part, we're going to move away from that simple, unhelpful label of laziness. Instead, we're going to dive into the science of what is actually going on inside your head. You'll see it's a process, something called learned avoidance.
That heavy feeling, that powerful urge to procrastinate, that's not weakness. I want you to think of it more like a check engine light for your brain. It's a signal, and it's telling you that something about your approach to studying is causing some serious friction. Our job today is to figure out what that signal is trying to tell you.
Okay, so what is that check engine light trying to say? Well, it usually points to one of three core psychological triggers that make your brain want to sprint in the opposite direction of a textbook. So let's break them down. First up is something called stress association. Basically, if your past experiences with studying involved a lot of pressure, maybe some strict teachers, or just that constant fear of getting a bad grade, your brain learned a very simple equation. Studying equals stress. So now, even just thinking about opening a book can automatically trigger that same defensive, uncomfortable feeling.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how this shows the constant battle going on in your brain. See, your brain is fundamentally wired to seek out immediate rewards. Scrolling through social media, that gives you these tiny instant hits of a feel-good chemical called dopamine. Studying, well, the reward for that, a good grade, that future career, that's way, way off in the distance. When it's faced with that choice, your brain almost always goes for the quick, easy win. It's just how we're built.
And this leads us to the third internal trigger. And it's often the deepest one. It can be a really tough thing to admit to ourselves, but it is incredibly common. Sometimes the resistance you feel, it isn't really about the effort the work takes. It's about what happens after the work is done.
This right here is a powerful, powerful form of self-protection. Your brain basically creates a loophole for you. See, if you don't give it your all, if you procrastinate and then you cram at the last minute, then any potential failure doesn't feel like it's a reflection of your actual ability. It's a defense mechanism that feels safe in the moment, but it's the very thing that can hold you back from ever seeing what you're truly capable of.
Okay, so we've covered the internal triggers, the stuff happening in your mind. But it's not all in your head. Sometimes the problem isn't your past experiences, it's your present setup. There are some very real, very practical hurdles related to your skills and your environment that often go completely unnoticed. And these are the big three: your ability to focus, the actual methods you're using, and the space you're in. When these things aren't working for you, studying feels like trying to run through mud. It's just exhausting.
This is so, so important. So many students I talk to think they can't study because they're not smart enough. But the real issue, more often than not, is just a drained attention span. In the world we live in, full of constant distractions, our ability to concentrate is weaker than it's ever been. And when your focus is totally shot, even a simple paragraph can feel overwhelming, which creates the illusion that the subject itself is too hard.
Let's be real for a second. Most of us were never actually taught how to study effectively. We just kind of do what we see other people do, right? Rereading our notes over and over, highlighting everything in sight, pulling all-nighters. The thing is, these are really passive techniques that don't work very well. And when you put in a ton of effort without seeing any results, your brain starts to think, hey, why are we even bothering? It naturally starts to resist the entire process. And this might be the most overlooked piece of the entire puzzle. We always think we need more motivation, but often, what we really need is just a better environment. If you're trying to study on your bed, you're fighting this constant uphill battle because your brain associates that space with sleep, not with focus. Creating a clean, quiet, dedicated study space, that doesn't require motivation.
It just makes the act of starting infinitely easier.
So, after all this, where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with a completely new way to think about this. We're throwing out that old, unhelpful story about being lazy, and we're replacing it with something much more accurate and honestly a lot more empowering.
And this really says it all. This is the big takeaway. Study avoidance isn't who you are. It's a learned response that your brain has developed to protect you from things like stress and boredom and the fear of failure. It's a strategy, even if it's not a very helpful one right now.
You know, knowing all of this isn't just some interesting psychology trivia. This is the key. Once you really understand why your brain is hitting the brakes, you can finally stop blaming yourself and start addressing the real issues, whether that's changing your environment, learning a new study technique, or just reframing how you think about success and failure.
So I'll just leave you with this thought. This feeling, this avoidance, it isn't a permanent part of your personality. It's a pattern, and patterns can absolutely be changed. So based on everything we just uncovered, what's one small shift you can make, not in what you do, but in how you think about studying? Because that, right there, that's where the real change begins.